In our last two videos of the series, Heejin, NewJeans saga, we focused on HYBE Chief Legal Officer Chung Jin-soo's testimony and HYBE's framing of Heejin's actions and Heejin's interesting responses to CLO Chung's testimony in court. And since then, a new report has added another layer to the story, and this time about alleged scripted KakaoTalk messages that Heejin submitted to court. Sports Donga reports that HYBE countered her evidence by submitting what they claim is the original chat, showing her directing a former ADOR executive, Lee Sang-woo probably, to rewrite messages and even saying things like, "This will be captured, write it well," and "cut, here we stop." And if true, this would raise pretty serious questions about the credibility of her evidence. So let me read you this article by Sports Donga titled Heejin accused of submitting possibly manipulated evidence to court. She says she will respond in November. Reported on September 15th, this morning, 2025. And it starts with this interesting sentence. Erase it and write it again. Cut. That's it. 지우고 다시 써. Cut. 여기까지. Former ADOR CEO Heejin, who is locked in a 26 billion Korean won put option dispute with HYBE, has come under suspicion of submitting potentially manipulated KakaoTalk messages as evidence to the court, which is a development that could have major repercussions. The issue surfaced during the September 11th hearing at the Seoul Central District Court, when HYBE submitted what it claimed was the original version of the same KakaoTalk conversation Heejin had earlier filed. According to the legal community on September 14th, HYBE's submission contained additional lines absent from Heejin's earlier version, raising suspicions that her version had been edited. In HYBE's copy, Heejin appears to tell former ADOR executive on the other end of the chat, saying or writing, "I'm going to capture this, write it well. Now it's time to act. Go again. And erase it and write it again. Cut. That's it. 이거 캡처할 거다. 잘 써라. 이제부터 연기할 타임이야. Time to act. Seriously? 연기할 타임이야? Go again. 다시 고, 지우고 다시 써, cut, 여기까지. Wow. Has she ever dreamed of being a movie director or something? Anyways, so, this... Sorry, I couldn't help. So these phrases suggested that she was directing, literally directing or staging the conversation. Now, HYBE also pointed out the exact timestamps where those lines appeared, and claimed in court that even Heejin's own evidence showed, "I'm going to capture this, write it well," at the very beginning of the chat. The KakaoTalk exchange in question included claims by a senior ADOR manager, former senior ADOR manager, that they were being harassed by a HYBE executive. The messages date back to January 2024, just before Heejin's conflict with HYBE over ADOR's management surfaced. Heejin has submitted them as proof that she and her aides were under pressure from HYBE, and that this pressure contributed to her resignation. The case, now being heard by the Seoul Central District Court Civil Division 31st, combines two lawsuits. So this is the context about the case we talked about in our last two videos. Heejin and two others suing HYBE over the put option execution, and HYBE's counter lawsuit seeking confirmation of shareholder agreement termination. In response to the latest allegations, Heejin directly sent a statement to Sports Donga, which is the Korean media agency that wrote this particular article that we are reading right now. Heejin argued, "The September 11th trial only allowed ADOR's side to conduct direct examination of a witness we had requested. The reporting is based mostly on unilateral questioning from our opposing counsel. Because cross-examination was postponed to November 27th due to lack of time, I will be presenting my rebuttal then. Until that date, the reports may not be accurate or fair. Why did I say ADOR, though, not HYBE? Wait. The September 11th trial only allowed ADOR side to conduct a direct examination of a witness we had requested. But isn't this trial like about HYBE versus Heejin? It's different from ADOR versus NewJeans case, though. Are they like being confused? I'm pretty sure the statement is probably written by Heejin lawyers. I don't know. I gotta look into this. Anyways, let's go back to the text of the article. Now, beyond this specific controversy, the KakaoTalk screenshots are emerging as a potential trigger that could sway multiple rulings across Heejin's ongoing lawsuits. One example, Source Music, which is home to LE SSERAFIM, has sued Heejin for defamation, obstruction of business, and insult. Just last month, that court decided to formally admit Heejin's KakaoTalk messages as evidence, which is a decision that already drew attention. Reported by Min-young. Alright, so if these alleged stage directions in the KakaoTalk conversations are authentic, they could potentially strike at the heart of Heejin's legal strategy. Because courts don't just weigh the contents of evidence, they also weigh whether it was authentic, unaltered, and reliable. So if HYBE convinces the court that Heejin doctored evidence, every other piece of her testimony could be viewed with more skepticism. And on the other hand, Heejin argues that she hasn't had the chance to cross-examine HYBE's claims yet. So she insists her rebuttal will come at the November 27th hearing, and she warns that current reporting reflects only HYBE's side of questioning. In other words, she's asking the public and maybe the court not to treat this latest revelation as settled fact. And this is where the stakes rise, because in Korean, and other countries, I'm pretty sure, in Korean defamation and business litigation, the integrity of digital evidence often could tip entire rulings. And remember, as this article mentions, Source Music, their separate lawsuit against Heejin has already accepted KakaoTalk messages as evidence. And if those same messages are shown to be manipulated, like her defense could collapse across multiple fronts. The KakaoTalk messages that Heejin potentially have submitted for her case against Source Music. So yeah, she is involved with multiple fronts and multiple legal battles, and her defense could collapse across multiple fronts if there are also other messages that she submitted that could be suspected of being scripted or faked or doctored. This is why these KakaoTalk screenshots are being called a trigger, because they could tip multiple rulings, not just this particular case. Now, for over a year, if you remember, if you have followed this case closely, Heejin has repeated the claim that HYBE manipulated my KakaoTalk messages. 짜집기 is the particular wording that she has used. Yet, evidence, presented in court now raises the possibility that Heejin herself may have been the one, editing those conversations. So yeah, here are some examples of videos and articles with titles with the word 짜집기 KakaoTalk messages that have been manipulated or edited by HYBE. That's the claim that Heejin has been making over and over again. But if it was Heejin herself that may have been the one editing those conversations, then situations change. Also, check this out. Last year, in October 2024, we saw a very similar playbook from Heejin and her PR agency. So the issue back then centered on the phrase plagiarism is ambiguous. 표절은 애매하고. And here's a translation of this conversation that Kim and-jang presented in court back then. So for context, on April 10th, 2024, before HYBE's audit formally began, Heejin had already met with her legal team. And according to HYBE, that legal team advised her that plagiarism is ambiguous, meaning it would be hard to prove in court. Because plagiarism disputes are notoriously subjective and difficult to win under copyright law. In response, Heejin reportedly said, "Our goal isn't really to fix HYBE. We don't care about improving or correcting them. The goal isn't reform. We just need to file complaints. The parents will go straight to the Fair Trade Commission quickly and decisively. Whether or not the FTC investigates, the issue will already spread everywhere and the whole world will be shaken." And even though she was told plagiarism was legally shaky, she pivoted to a PR and regulatory pressure strategy, that is. And the idea wasn't to win or strict copyright terms. Win on strict copyright terms, but to weaponize the acquisition or weaponize accusation, publicly and use the FTC complaint as a way to cause maximum disruption to HYBE. So yeah, in other words, plagiarism is ambiguous was legal advice, but she saw it as irrelevant since the real battle would be fought in the court of public opinion. Now, HYBE's legal team revealed this KakaoTalk conversation in court, which was then reported by multiple Korean media agencies. But then something interesting happened. For example, reporter Yoon Hae-young detailed how Heejin's PR agency, McCall Consulting firm, reacted when the phrase plagiarism is ambiguous was reported from court records. So here's an article from October of last year. Initially, Heejin's side insisted this line had been twisted by HYBE through malicious editing. Okay? 짜집기되어 악의적으로 해석된 허위 사실입니다. It's fake, manipulated with evil intention by HYBE. Saying that it had nothing to do with Eyelid allegedly copying NewJeans. They even demanded, the consulting firm, McCall Consulting Firm, even demanded articles be corrected or deleted, threatening legal action if the media didn't comply. But, according to the article, only 4 hours and 11 minutes later, their stance flipped. They admitted it was about Eyelid and NewJeans, but claimed the phrase only meant that winning a plagiarism case in court was uncertain. And the outlet also noted how HYBE's law firm, Kim and-jang, had shown this material in a courtroom presentation based on ADOR audit documents. And when McCall Consulting Firm argued it was illegal to publish private Kakao Talks, the paper pointed out that these materials were already presented openly in court, and reporting them was legally protected. So that sequence, denial, threat, and then quiet reframing, is kind of striking. And also their accusation that HYBE doctored and manipulated these messages when it's not really the case. That's also interesting. And that kind of backtracking reveals a pattern about Heejin and her camp. Whenever something potentially damaging surfaces, the first reaction is to cry 짜집기, like splicing, manipulation, and distortion. But as more context comes out, the explanation shifts, sometimes contradicting earlier statements. And fast forward to today, we're seeing the exact same pattern with the KakaoTalk messages. For months, like I said, Heejin has been repeating that HYBE spliced and manipulated 짜집기, her conversation. But in court, HYBE has presented alternate versions, suggesting that it was actually Heejin who may have staged or scripted those exchanges. And when you place these two moments side by side, the 2024 plagiarism debate and this year's KakaoTalk controversy, there's a bigger picture that emerges. This isn't just about one message or one phrase. It shows how central narrative control has been to Minijin's legal and public strategy, and how often the narrative has shifted under pressure. Now, what we're seeing here isn't happening in a vacuum, because Minijin has a history of using KakaoTalk records as part of her public defense. She's released them before, if you remember, once at her first press conference, and another time when she tried to discredit a former ADOR employee who accused her of workplace bullying. And that female employee, former ADOR employee, alleged she had been sexually harassed by ADOR's deputy CEO, Lee Sang-woo, and she was bullied in the workplace by Minijin herself. To counter this, Minijin disclosed private details about the employee along with selected KakaoTalk messages. She also revealed that employee's salary even. And if it turns out that Minijin was indeed splicing and editing KakaoTalk records, as HYBE has now suggested in court, then the credibility of those earlier KakaoTalk messages releases that she released would also be called into question, potentially. Because Dispatch already gave us a glimpse of that tendency. So in her messages with Deputy CEO Lee Sang-woo, Minijin wasn't simply responding. She was actively scripting, like we read in today's article. She wrote, "I'm wondering if I should file an internal ethics report against Mr. Lee even now. He says there's no charge, but the way he questions me feels biased. Add this at the end." So she's writing a statement on behalf of the VP Lee, former vice president of ADOR, Lee Sang-woo. In another message, she said, "The fundamental problem was Miss B, the former ADOR employee, her poor job performance, especially the lack of clear reporting and communication." And then she told the executive, "Make this part bold or underline it. 밑줄 볼드 치거나 밑줄 그어." So these earlier instances, where Minijin again directed how statements should be worded or highlighted, feel kind of strangely, eerily similar to the latest court revelations that we just learned about. Because in HYBE submissions, the chat log allegedly shows Minijin telling a subordinate things like, "I'm going to screenshot this, so write it well. Now it's time to act. Go again. And erase it and rewrite. Cut. That's enough." And that sense of stage management is hard to ignore. And the stage directions are practically the same. Only at this time, it's not about preparing an internal statement. It's about producing evidence for a courtroom battle, which some might say is even more problematic, legally and ethically speaking. Now, I don't know. And one more thing, because this isn't the first time questions have been raised about how Minijin handles evidence. So here it is. Back in March 2025, this year, during the Ignore Her controversy involving NewJeans member Hani, a nearly identical issue surfaced. So Minijin's side submitted a KakaoTalk transcript to court as proof that Hani had been deliberately told to be ignored. But when HYBE's lawyers, Kim In-jang lawyers, compared the version filed in court with the version presented in a courtroom PowerPoint, key parts of the conversation turned out to be missing. So here's an article from March 11, 2005. I'll be reading for you. Key evidence submitted by Minijin in NewJeans Hani Ignore Her controversy faces allegations of manipulation. March 11, 2005. The controversy surrounding NewJeans member Hani's claim that she was told to be ignored has taken a dramatic turn, with allegations that the core evidence submitted in court by Minijin may have been manipulated. On March 7th, during the injunction hearing on preservation of agent status and prohibition of advertising contracts, NewJeans side argued that the Ignore Her incident amounted to a serious breach of the group's exclusive contract. Sorry. All right. To support this, they submitted a KakaoTalk transcript from June 1st, 2024 between Hani and Heejin. But analysis revealed discrepancies between the original chat record submitted to the court and the version presented later as a PowerPoint slide in the courtroom. In the court-submitted transcript, Hani reportedly said, "I don't remember if those were the exact words, just something along those lines." When Heejin pressed her with questions like, "Was it ignore her? Did everyone ignore you? And did the manager tell them not to greet you?" Hani answered, "I'm not sure." However, in the PowerPoint presentation later shown in court by NewJeans' legal team, Heejin's leading questions were deleted. Okay, so on the left, we have the PowerPoint presentation by Sejong Law Firms representing NewJeans and Heejin. On the right, we have Kim and-jang lawyers' PowerPoint representing ADOR and HYBE. Okay, and in Sejong Law Firm's version, PowerPoint version, Heejin's leading questions were deleted, leaving only Hani's comments visible. So this led to allegations of manipulation, which were amplified when HYBE's legal team, Kim and-jang, countered with the complete transcript. They argued that even Hani herself hadn't considered the issue serious at the time, but that Heejin had exaggerated for her own purposes. During the same hearing, HYBE also introduced a video showing 3 island members bowing at a 90 HYBE also introduced a video showing 3 island members bowing at a 90-degree angle when they encountered NewJeans. Some critics had claimed that greetings had stopped after this, but additional evidence revealed that Hani had submitted detailed reports to Heejin about greeting practices, undermining those claims. HYBE emphasized that there was only one encounter between NewJeans and islets on May 27th, 2024, and that no ongoing issue existed. I just couldn't help laughing, imagining those, high-paying lawyers talking about these girls bowing at a 90-degree in courtroom battles. Isn't it hilarious? As the controversy grew, Hani herself posted on Instagram after the hearing, "I remember everything clearly. I wanted to say this in court, but I held back." But this clashed with the KakaoTalk evidence, where she had written, "I don't remember exactly." That inconsistency only fueled further debate over how much weight to give Heejin's version of events. So that was an article or news from March of this year. So specifically, Heejin's leading questions. Was it ignore her? Did everyone ignore you? 무시해 이거? 모두가 너를 무시한 거니? Or did the manager tell them not to greet you? Were deleted, leaving only Hani's uncertain answers like, "I'm not sure." So, and when you line that episode up against what is being alleged now, that Heejin may have directed her subordinate, the former executive at ADOR, to act, 연기해, erase and rewrite, 지우고 다시 써, or make it look good for the screenshot, the pattern becomes difficult to dismiss. Again and again, the controversy isn't just about what was said, but about how the story was packaged and presented, and in some cases, possibly reshaped to serve Heejin's narrative. So before we wrap up, I want to highlight some of the comments that some of you left on the last video, because I think they capture the mood around the story pretty well. For example, someone said, "I think Heejin may have actually begun to believe her own lies, though she's having trouble keeping up with which ones she said. When the facts are on your side, you speak like a lawyer. When they're not, you scream like you're auditioning for a soap opera. She's a compulsive liar. This woman is a pathological liar and is panicking now that she's getting caught and just making up that does not make sense. If she isn't sentenced, then they are making a mockery out of the legal system and basically saying that breaching contracts just because you feel like it is okay. Both I will skip that part. Or both MHA and NJ needs to suffer the consequences of their own actions. So the overall mood in the comments has been, overwhelmingly skeptical of Minijin. A lot of viewers described her as a compulsive or even pathological liar, pointing out how her shifting stories suggest she may be, losing control of her own narrative. And others noted how her behavior in court, raising her voice, interrupting, it contrasts sharply with how someone confident in their evidence would act. And some people say that if the court doesn't hold her accountable, it risks undermining the integrity of the legal system itself. So, let me end with questions. Do you think Minijin is simply losing control of her own narrative? Or is this courtroom drama really about evidence? Or is it becoming more about performance? And how much should narrative control factor into judging this case? Let me know your thoughts by writing comments. And when you write comments to discuss, let's try to stay positive, respectful, and classy. Thank you guys. Peace and love. Bye-bye.